All right, welcome back to ABC News Live Reports. Kraft Heinz has announced that it will remove artificial food dyes from its food products within the next 2 years. The company is saying that only some of its products still actually contain color additives, but the brands that still use the dyes will have them removed by the end of 2027. So with well-known foods, right, Kool-Aid, Jell-O, Heinz ketchup, they could all likely be affected by these changes. And the move, of course, comes 2 months after Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. unveiled a plan to phase out the dyes from the nation's food supply. So for more on this, I want to bring in ABC News medical correspondent Dr. Darian Sutton. Okay, so first of all, what is your initial reaction here to some of these big companies making the announcement they plan to do this? I think it's a little surprising, too, how much food dye is in some of these products. You think that your ketchup would be red. It's tomato.
You know, it is surprising. It's estimated that at least 10% of products within the supermarket have some type of artificial dye in them. Of those products, 40% have at least 3 or more. In terms of the direction that we're seeing today, this is relatively expected, at least from some manufacturers, as you stated, RFK Jr. had that bold initiative to remove at least 8 artificial dyes from the food supply. Now, important context, 2 of those dyes will likely have their FDA approval removed. But as for the other 6, this initiative is very much a strong suggestion, as manufacturers are not legally required or committed to removing these dyes, and the effort at that point is very much voluntary. But with consumer demand, as we've seen in Europe, we're seeing a change in that direction.
Yeah, so in terms of consumers now learning more about what's in their food, are there risks to consuming these products?
Yeah, well, Kana, this is a movement that has been ongoing for over a decade. Many health advocates citing the studies that show that there is an association between increased consumption of artificial dyes and neurobehavioral problems, specifically in children. For example, problems with attention and problems with hyperactivity. However, when you look at those studies, the data isn't fully clear. We do see that association, but it's not clear if there's a cause and effect. And Kana, there are also other studies that have been cited in terms of increased risk of cancer. Now, those studies are mainly animal studies, specifically animal models where they gave animals certain types of dye and they saw increased rates of certain types of thyroid cancer. But it's important to understand that those associations have not been found in human studies. There have been no human studies that show an association with dye and cancer. But at the end of it, these dyes don't provide any nutritional value. And if there is a risk, many are stating, why have it in our products?
Well, exactly. Especially I'm thinking about all the parents out there like myself worried about what their kids are eating and how this could impact a child's brain different than an adult's. So what's your advice to people as they're walking through the grocery store if they want to take a step here to try and eliminate these dyes from their diet? What's the first thing that they should do? Reading the label is an obvious one, but what are the red flags?
Well, when you're reading the label, it's really important to pay attention to what you're reading. When you're looking at that ingredient list, many of us might not be aware that these food dyes are in products that you might not associate with bright, luminous colors. So you want to make sure to pay attention to that label. And most often, the dyes are listed at the end of the ingredient list, so you might miss it. Also, if you're making choices, you can choose options where it's stated that there are no artificial additives. That obviously is going to lead you in the better direction. And then if you're making products at home and you want to use dyes, you can opt for other versions that might be more helpful and not artificial. We're talking about beet juice, turmeric, and other forms of additives that can help provide that color, but can help avoid that risk.
And they both stain your countertop, too. I can say that for sure. All right, Dr. Sutton, thank you.